I'm here today with Puai Wichman, who's the founder and CEO of Aura Partners. Great to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
So could you start by telling me a little bit about your background?
I've got a legal background. I graduated with a law degree out of Auckland University in New Zealand. I worked for a law firm there until I was sent over to the Cook Islands to set up a satellite office for that law firm.
So you started in the Cook Islands, went to law school, and they sent you back to the Cook Islands.
Correct. And by the way, it wasn't my plan to come back to the Cook Islands so soon after, just graduating and being a young attorney. I had envisaged working in the law firm for at least 10 years before I came back here, but that wasn't
the plan.
That wasn't the plan, and that's certainly not the way it worked out. So I ended up back here. Did 1 year as an attorney on the island, working extremely long hours until I was headhunted by one of the trust companies, and that was in 1993.
Very good. And then you eventually went on to start your own trust company here?
Yes, in the year 2000, I ventured out on my own and partnered up with another individual on the island, and have been doing my own thing ever since.
For over 20 years now?
Over 20 years.
Wonderful. So if someone's looking to create an asset protection trust, what are the benefits of using the Cook Islands as the jurisdiction?
Well, the Cook Islands was a pioneering jurisdiction for enacting what we now commonly call asset protection trusts. It wasn't something common back in the 1980s. So the Cook Islands was the first jurisdiction in the world to give something quite specific in protecting individuals' wealth through using a trust vehicle. So that's the starting point, and that piece of legislation has been copied the world over by other jurisdictions and by some of the states in the US.
Yeah.
So that validates the ingenuity and the strength of that piece of legislation. So from putting that legislation together, what's transpired over that period of time is experience. And the other important thing, I think, for the Cook Islands is legal precedent. We have case law that validates the legislation. So it's fine to have the legislation, but you've got to have the people who can implement it, who can work within the framework, but you've got to have also the judicial backing of that legislation. So we've got those two pillars underneath our legislation. We've got professionals who've been working in this industry for over 30 years. We have the experience, we know the various scenarios that come out of being involved in the asset protection business. And then we've got a judiciary that recognizes our trust laws.
And there's no higher form of compliment than copying. And other nations have tried to copy the laws, but it's not just about the laws, as you mentioned. Simply having the laws is very easy to do. Someone can copy the laws. It's having the backing, the judicial system, the mindset of a country that supports that. Absolutely. One other factor that I would say that's also a benefit of using the Cook Islands as opposed to another jurisdiction is its distance from the United States. It deters people from wanting to come all the way to the United States. It's a beautiful country here in the Cook Islands, but in order to get here, it took me about 24 hours of flight time. If you can put a 24-hour flight, probably 2 days total of travel time between a potential creditor and your assets, that's going to deter some people. Maybe someday Elon Musk will colonize Mars. We can start a Mars trust company, but for now, the Cook Islands is going to serve as a very good.
Absolutely, that distance is a real barrier. The lack of familiarity with the Cook Islands. I mean, the first step that any creditor attorney has to think about is, where is the Cook Islands?
Yeah.
That's the first step, and they're going to find...
U.S. attorneys think it's in the Caribbean, or most U.S. people think it's in the Caribbean.
And then, of course, they have to research the local requirements in the country. And one important thing that I always say to clients in the U.S. is, if there's a creditor attorney wanting to come and retain an attorney here in the Cook Islands, nobody works here on contingencies.
Yeah.
You've got to front up with...
Which is very different in America, where a lot of work is done on a contingency fee.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you'd be prepared to put a deposit down of $100,000 if you're even thinking about attacking a Cook Islands trust. And that's just your legal fees. Now, if you go into any action here in the Cook Islands, if I'm the defendant, I'm going to front up to the judge and say, "So I want my costs covered too. And I want to be secured in terms of that cost, so I'm probably going to ask for another $100,000 from the litigant before anything gets going. So there's a lot of deterrence in place.
And then on top of that, there's also the standard of proof, which is much higher here in the Cook Islands.
Much higher.
You have to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt, which is much harder standard to reach than the simple preponderance of the evidence, which is required in the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the criminal standard.
Exactly. That's reserved for the criminal standards in the United States.
And so what we did was we brought it into the realm of trust litigation. So I thought, again, just how ingenious is that, making it so difficult for anybody to attack a Cook Islands trust.
And it's the reason that so many trusts continue to be registered here in the Cook Islands. So there are a handful of trust companies in the Cook Islands. Ur is one of the ones that I use the most. But what would you say is the advantage of using Aura?
Other than having been in the business for a very long time, I think we like to distinguish ourselves from our competitors on the basis that we stand and deliver. What I mean by that is we'll be with you in the good times, but when the bad times come, we're still going to be there with you. And what we found with some of the other trustees, not just in the Cook Islands but everywhere else, is when the bad times come, they start running for the hills. And so often I get calls from other trust companies, can you take this client, can you take this client? And after a while I said, no, hang on a minute. They've been paying you all these fees all these years,
right?
And you've never looked to offload them, and then suddenly somebody's knocking at the door and there's thunder storms developing. Who do you call? You call Puai Wichman, because he's going to stand and look after that client. So that's how we distinguish ourselves. But we're here in the good and definitely in the bad.
And on top of that, I found very good customer service. I've never heard a single complaint from any client that I've sent your way.
Oh, that's good.
And I would certainly share it with you if that ever did happen, but hopefully that won't ever happen. So can you tell me a time when a client benefited from using your services, maybe a story or an example?
Well, I think I just touched on an area where a client who had, who had been with his trustee for nearly 20 years. And then there was litigation on the horizon, and then suddenly this client found himself without a trustee or a unwilling trustee. So, I mean, for me, that really highlighted how important our services were. But it's also really important for us to make sure that we look after the people that have that trust and faith in us. I mean, this is more than just a business. This is about protecting people's livelihoods. I have to constantly remind our staff members, what you're doing here is actually really, really important for people's livelihoods. It's not just pieces of paper. So to answer your question, I think we made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives over many, many years. We've given them a peace of mind. We've made difficult situations a lot easier to handle. And that's what we are, problem solvers.
Came across a quote recently that I like, which is, freedom does not exist without security of assets. And most of our clients are Americans, and freedom is very important to us. And you really are the gateway to that, especially in America, where lawsuits have become so outrageous and so easy to bring lawsuits, and jurors have run away with some incredible verdicts. Giving our clients the ability to protect their assets, or also give them some leverage in negotiating a settlement by being able to say, hey, if you want to try to get money, you're going to go to the Cook Islands. You're gonna have pretty much no chance of succeeding there. Take our settlement offer, and we can resolve this much quicker.
And highlight the very small chance of piercing a
yes, extremely small. We can't say zero, but as close to zero just about as close to zero as you can.
And as yet, we have.
And I understand your company has never had been ordered to pay out to a creditor. So beyond simply serving as a trustee for a Cook Islands trust, what other services does Aura provide, and maybe what other services may you be providing in the future?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question for us. We see ourselves as being an innovative trustee company. We are looking constantly to the future. Where does the future sit for wealth preservation, asset protection? How can we give our clients security in the future in a different world? So we're definitely moving into being able to protect crypto assets, NFTs, and all those similar type digital assets. Of course, it's a new area for everybody, not just for us, but for some of our clients and for the attorneys like yourselves who are advising these what I call digital natives, so this growing number of wealthy individuals who see an opportunity in the digital world. So we want to cater for that particular market. It's still early days, and we are developing a particular platform that we believe will assist trustees, attorneys, wealth managers, and even the ultimate clients deal with these new assets, but still retain that underlying element of protection and security and privacy.
And this may kind of fall into my last question for you here today, which is, can you tell me a little bit about your Next Gen Trust?
Yes, it's a project we've been working on for the last 3 years. It's still in the early development stages. In fact, it's still really at the early conceptual stages. We've got a working model that we're working with, but it's a case specifically for the crypto holders and that digital native market that we think is going to become more and more important. It's still the same things. We want to be able to set up a trust in a lot more seamless, easier way than it currently is. When you look at trustee companies, we have some really archaic procedures and processes in place, and that's not necessarily from an inability by trustee companies to change. It's more the environment that we deal in. Some of our clients are still very conservative. They still want to have their passport copies notarized the old-fashioned way, and that's fine. But the world is changing, and I think we're going to see less and less of that, and we're going to see more and more of the digital natives replacing that type of clientele for us. So that's the future, and we want to be able to cater for that new, more digital savvy type client.
It's really great how forward-thinking your company is. Puai, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I want to thank you for all that you've done for my clients over the years. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I certainly look forward to continuing to work with you a lot into the future.
Thank you, Blake.